Okay, working with pencil. Number one, the very first thing that you need to know is that you can work with the pencil either with the point or with the side, okay? Now, with drawing, if you remember carefully when we first started, okay, I taught you about techniques, okay? The very first technique is blending, okay? Blending is using the side of the pencil and pressure and patience, okay? Working with the side, developing a shade and a value. The more pressure, the darker, the less pressure, the lighter, okay? Now, that's just that's about 2-3 grades of value, but I can go further by, again, pressing down harder and getting a very deep, dark value. And I'm doing this slowly, little at a time, okay? And now I'm pressing down softer, and I'm getting a lighter tone, okay? And even lighter as I go down. Now again, what this is called, when you vary your tone, it's called value variation, okay? Now I'm using watercolor paper. So watercolor paper tends to have a little bit of a texture to it. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to use that point a bit more so that way I could get the deepest, darkest tone that I can get. Okay, varying your value, working from light to dark. It also creates what we call dimension. That's how we get objects to turn in some way, to make them look round, like they have volume. Okay, so now I went from light to dark using the side of my pencil. Now, another technique called hatching. Now, because I went from dark to light, I'm going to do it vice versa where I have light to dark. Reason, you always want contrast in between your areas. Now, this is a very systematic type of hatching, okay? I tend to get a little bit more chaotic with my hatching, so to speak. I layer in the sense of trying to keep it in I keep it in one direction, but there are times where it starts to look like cross hatching because I want to fill my page. I want to be able to play with the light to dark. So therefore, I've created this dark shade by adding this hatching in one direction, trying to keep it all in one direction, one stroke, okay, instead of taking it in multiple ways as I would with cross hatching. Now again, this is called hatching. And I did value variation. I went from light to dark, and I could even go darker. Okay, just come in a little closer with my lines. The closer you get with the lines, the darker, farther apart, the lighter was the definition back then. Now, here, I'm gonna go from dark to light, and I'll go ahead and use cross-hatching. Now with cross-hatching, what you may wanna do is you may wanna just turn your page while you work. It makes it a little bit easier. Okay, just keep turning, and you'll get a value of this dark to light, okay, or light to dark. More cross-hatching, the darker, the less cross-hatching, the lighter, okay? Now again, all I'm using right now is pencil. This too can be done in pen, pencil, color pencil, any of these techniques, okay? This is blending, hatching, cross-hatching. And then what did I do? I've got a medium, like this medium shade, very light, all the way to a very dark shade. And I could even get darker. More pressure, more crisscrossing, the darker that area is going to appear, okay? Now another thing too, I'm working with what we call a 6B lead, okay? 6B lead. And if you remember carefully, we talked about it was like a number scale, the HB, which is the normal number 2 pencil, okay? That's the mid-tone area, mid-tone value. Then you've got 2B, you've got 4B, you've got 6B, all the way to 9B. This is the light, this is darker. All of these are very, very dark. The bit larger the number, the darker the lead. Now, what that means is that this lead has been compressed to the softness, which means that the compression is less, which allows the pigment to be released onto the page more. So any mark that you'll make, it'll be a 6B mark. 9B is even darker, so if you push down, you'll get a very dark line, darker than the 6B, okay? So remember, HB is your number normal 2 pencil, then there's 2B, 4B, 6B, and 9B. Then you have the H's. There's 2H, 4H, and then all the way to F's. F's get even lighter. All of these are the lighter tones. Now, again, this is, you could say, like a number scale with this mid-tone, this HB being the mid-tone, you could say, and the number 2 pencil, which is a regular number 2. These are all drawing pencils, okay? You could get them, don't get them, up to you, you decide, but you could still work with that HB lead in order to get these type of values. Now, the next technique is a little bit more strenuous. It's called stippling. And stippling is dots. Closer you get with the dots, the darker, and farther apart, the lighter. Now again, this can be done, not only in pencil, color pencil, this could be done in pen. Pen can also, you can have any of these techniques and you could still do them in pen. The only difficult one in pen is the blending, because it's kind of difficult to get a value using the side of the pen, because you'll always have the point. But the trick is, when you're using pen, to come down with a very soft touch, and you'll be able to get something that kind of looks like blending by going back over it several times to where the lines tend to dissipate and they become more like shade and value and form. Now again, these techniques that I'm using, okay, these are the techniques. Media is the pencil. Techniques are how you use it. This again, this particular technique is stippling. Closer you get, the darker, farther apart, the lighter. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to put more dots until I get it to the value that I want. And I can keep on going until I get a really dark value. Okay? Now, hopefully this little video will help those students that are having trouble with pencil medium. Okay, again, I'm going over the pencil medium. Now, again, what did we talk about? We talked about the grades of pencils, okay, the HB being the mid-range, then 2B, 4B, 6B, and 9B. Remember, these are softer leads as you go down, okay? They're softer and darker, okay? Now, and we also talked about blending, we talked about hatching, we talked about cross-hatching, and we talked about stippling, okay? Those are the 4 different techniques that you could use while you're working, again, with pencil. Now, I hope this little video helped. Again, I'm going to be reviewing every single media. This is pencil. Okay, what I want to do is I want to show you now, using pencil, how you could shade in, let's say, a ball, okay? Usually, when you shade in any object, the light is coming in from some kind of light source. And that area that is usually bathed by light is the lightest area. Now, I'm using the side, but yet, as you see, it's starting to look a little bit like hatching or cross-hatching. But the more that I pass over it, the more it's going to look like the blending technique. Now, because I'm working on this particular type of paper, this is, again, watercolor paper, it has texture. So now, again, I'm using the side of the pencil. I'm going from this light to dark, and creating the shadowed area on this spherical type of shape and form, okay? Now, I've left a little bit of what we call reflective light all right? Reflective light is the light that bounces from the table to the surface of the object of which it rests. I'm gonna come a little bit darker. And now along here, this is gonna be my shadow, my cast shadow. So my cast shadow, normally, it would go from this very dark shade to a lighter shade. Now, because I came in with that line that's so dark, I want to try to disguise that line, make it disappear a bit by coming in with a dark value. Usually the cast shadow is also opposite to where the highlight area is on the object, okay? Now, to create form, to create dimension, to make the objects kind of turn, you could say, how do you do it? You do it with the value, this thing called chiaroscuro. Okay, we talked about it long ago. Chiaroscuro is applying value to an object to give it the appearance or the idea of it being 3D. And by doing what I'm doing here with the contrast, with my shade and value, I'm creating that dimension that we talked about, okay? I'm creating that light to dark, I'm creating that turn of the object, trying to make that spherical, this round form, the sphere, I'm trying to make it look in such a way that it's dimensional, okay? Like it's coming off the page somehow. And the more I'll work with it, the closer to reality, let's say, I'll get. And that's just using this particular form. I could have drawn almost anything, but I figured the easiest way to teach a beginner is just simply by doing this, okay? And then, so right here, what we did is we used our blending technique. Like I said, this is on watercolor paper, and watercolor paper tends to have texture to it, so it makes it a little bit difficult for us to come in with a line or a shade, like using it from the side of the pencil. It creates a texture when we lay it down, when we take the side of the pencil, we lay down that shade, it tends to take on the texture underneath it. In this case, it happens to be that bumpy texture, okay? So hopefully that will help you, all right, in your drawings. And again, I'll be repeating each and every medium. This is the pencil medium. Thank you.